Welcome to the Anonymous Andrew podcast. Life and the choices we make. The choices other people make. Why we choose to ignore the red flags. Red flags like gaslighting, cheating, addiction, mental illness, and much more. What role do they play in relationships? Follow me each week as we discuss these topics with anonymous guests and experts to hopefully become better humans, resulting in better choices. Like I say, been there, still doing that. Now on to the show. Andrew with you here, Anonymous Andrew, with a pre-episode note. The story you're about to hear is from a friend of mine who I admire. She went through a similar gaslighting, manipulating, horrible relationship a couple of years ago, 2 summers ago, almost to the month. And she's willing to come on and share her story. This topic of gaslighting and the manipulation and the lies, what it does to the victims in the relationships, to good, ordinary people who are just looking for love, just looking for companionship. And it's just not being talked about enough, in my opinion. And so I'm just trying to get as many stories out there as I can. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Please, folks, spread the word. We need to get this out there. This is it's not something we're going to solve overnight or even ever. But if we can help people identify these red flags and gaslighting early on, maybe they can get out of the relationships unscathed. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody. Anonymous Andrew back with another episode. And today I have another story from someone. This one is a crossover from the dating world into the real world. I'd like everybody to welcome a friend of mine. Her name is Angelica. And of course, that's not her real name. As always, we do anonymous. But Angelica, would you like to say hello?
Hi there.
Okay, so Angelica, you and I met professionally and we became friendly. And I think it's funny that in my life, I find that most of my friends are females. I don't have a lot of male friends. So you're just another female friend of mine that I've gotten close to. And over the past year or two, the conversations that we've had, you've had a very similar experience that I have had in the dating or in the relationship world. If you'd like, I'll let you tell the story. Of course, you can leave all the names, places, and dates out. I just want you to share what happened to you and the gaslighting, the lying, the manipulation. Would you like to share that story?
Yeah, sure. So, I joined a couple of apps and I've been on and off them a few years now. I'd say probably about 3 years. On and off, not consistently. And in the beginning, I was really hyped up to use them, but it went nowhere. And then 2 summers ago, I got a response on one of the apps. And it seemed that someone I was talking to was very easy to talk to, exchanging messages. And eventually it led to him saying, "Do you want to exchange numbers?" I said, "Of course." And it was around this time, literally around this time 2 years ago, right before Memorial Day weekend. And this person I met at the time was residing in this high-end upscale community where a lot of celebrities visit. And it just seemed perfect. It was summer. The environment seemed like it would be calming and soothing, and getting to meet somebody new that could lead to potentially something serious. Why not? And so we met, and we chatted on the phone. We FaceTime. Really nice guy. Didn't see anything wrong or red flags. And he happened to be working at one of the local places. And nothing, I don't know if I should say what his profession was.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Let's just say he was in the service industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was in the service industry. And so we met and we went on a date. We went for pizza. Really good looking guy in person. I met him where he was staying. A gentleman, I mean, really gentleman, came outside the door, picked me up from the car, shook hands. Um, Come on inside. Let me introduce you because he had roommates. Let me introduce you to the people living here. And we went out on a date. He had a BMW, opened the door for me, chivalrous completely. We went out for pizza. Looking back at it now, I realized he wasn't talking much, more so listening. And at the time, I didn't realize. Of course, when you're in a situation and that's what a female wants, a guy who listens attentively. And it was beautiful weather. I remember what I was wearing. All right, summer goes by and I spend my weekends there. It was a long summer at work, and I spent my weekends there as it was a way to relieve myself from the stress I was going through.
Let, let,
And it
let's
was
let's just tell the audience that where you live and where he lived is what, about a 90-minute, 2-hour drive. So this
yeah,
isn't,
I would
yeah,
say
okay.
about an hour and 20 minutes
Okay.
one way. Yeah.
One way, right.
And I would leave on a Friday evening and literally always at 7 o'clock, and I would return on Sunday afternoon. And it just happened to work that way time wise. And what we would do is he would come back from work. I'd be in the bedroom. He'd leave the TV on for me, the AC on. So it was when I walked in, it was like made for a queen. Bed was made, everything. So what more could you ask for? He'd come home from work at 10, 11 o'clock. And he'd always tell me, bring something nice to wear. We're going out later. We'd go out to a club, a party scene, nothing crazy. He would hold my hand. There was a point we went to the beach and he would take off my shoes and dust the sand off my feet and put the shoes back on. I mean, what could you ask for? This is like Prince Charming.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, the summer comes around to an end, and I started seeing less and less of him. And he started changing a little more, where he started becoming a little more hyper, a little more hyper in the sense hyper like distant, um just not the same personality. And it looked as if it was intentional. He ended off with me with taking me to where he lived, which was in another state, and went to meet his family, introduced me to his sisters, his cousins. And I remember prior to that, we were hanging out at the mall. And the entire time we got food from the food court, which is so unusual of him because he'd always treat me to a nice meal. So to go from something upscale to something like Chinese food at the food court was red flags right there. And I remember him having his earpiece on, his Bluetooth on, and the entire time he was on the phone with somebody, not saying a word, but just listening. And I was just getting annoyed, but I was just enjoying my food. And I felt like an idiot sitting there next to him on a stool. But I was eating, I was hungry. And I said, let me not overthink it. Went to his house. He went to play soccer with his friends. Enjoyed the day out at the park, watch him play soccer. It was beautiful. Come back to the house, introduced me to his cousins. And I remember before we're leaving, I follow him down the steps to leave the house, a flight of steps. And I remember I was walking slow at a slow pace behind him. And he had already reached at the bottom of the steps to say bye to the rest of the family. So he knocked on the bedroom door. As I'm coming down, as he's waiting for them to open the door, I go flying down the top of the steps all the way to the bottom landing. Hard, heavy, to the point where I had a black and blue bruise mark at the bottom of my lower back. And as I reached the bottom of the steps, he did absolutely nothing to help pick me up, to help see if I was okay. Nothing, absolutely nothing. It was basically like you sit there or you get yourself up. Just, I had to pick myself up quickly because I was so embarrassed.
So this is not the same man that you met 4 or 5 months earlier who opened up the
Right.
car door and treated you like a queen. All of a sudden, yeah, okay.
And, this is a man that was taking off my slippers and dusting the sand off my feet. And now this, as I'm trying to stand up and recover, like I remember pressing my back where it hurt, he's quickly moving around the floor, the first floor, and heading towards the exit door because I'm confused. And as he's standing in the middle of the doorway saying, "Are you coming?" That's
Mm.
it. Are you coming? I was getting irritated. I felt like a string, like I was on a knot. A string was tied around me. I literally felt like that. It was suffocating. And we drove off back to the house in this neighborhood. He didn't do anything to touch me, just held me with a close hug that night, and we went to bed. Next thing you know, a week and a half passes by, and that routine is not there. That predictability is not there where I'm waking up in the morning, he's texting me good morning, checking in throughout the day. I'm at work and I keep texting him, "How are you? I miss you. Is everything okay?" Nothing. "I'm fine. I'm fine." That's the most he would say. And that would be just very randomly on random days. Not picking up my phone calls. So now we're starting to see the signs of gaslighting. Now we're starting to see, all right, this is a little more than he played out to be. So fast forward, and one day I tried to call him, and one night, and it went straight to voicemail. And I remember texting him saying, "Are you okay?" He sends me back a long reply. Now, this is around Labor Day. A long reply through text message saying, "My plane has just landed." And I forget what state he said, but a state. And he goes, "My plane has just landed. I'm here for work. I don't think this is going to work moving forward. I don't know when I'm going to be back. But if you want to see me again and still talk to me, it's fine. And if you don't, I get it." Just like
Wow.
that, ghosted me. Just like that. And I was in total, utter shock. Like I felt it was traumatizing.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to, like I said, if you don't, this is the text. If you don't want to talk to me, you don't have to talk to me. Like I said, I understand. I don't want to put that pressure on you. I don't want to do that for you. I don't want to put you through all of that. Now, even with that being said, anyone would say that's my decision. But he just left it at that, left me extremely clueless. And you come to find out, realize later on that he knew intentionally from the very beginning it was going to be a summer fling. He knew from early on. Then, of course, you can't help but wonder where this person is, what this person is up to. So, of course, I go on this individual's Facebook page and I see he's settled down with somebody. And so, how ridiculous and shocking, like, I don't, disappointing, hurtful, no words, no words. But gaslighting, there were so many times that, in between, looking back at it in hindsight, and I think this was gaslighting that sometimes people gaslight and it's very messy and it from obvious relationships, but this man did it so professionally, so well, where he can lead you on and not have the slightest clue. And now looking back at it, I should have realized when I would bring some of my items there and some of my, belongings, cosmetics for us to go out in the night, and I would leave it there for the summer. And he would say things like when we'd be home watching TV, I brought my straightener there one time and he said, "You straighten your hair?" I said, "Yeah." "Oh, that's interesting." I left beautiful sandals there, earrings that I loved. All of that was gone. When he ghosted, all my things were left at this place, at this house he was at for the summer. And I never saw him again, including all the things that I had left there for the summer. Now, talk about, gaslighting and the signs of things that he would say things like, "Do you straighten your hair?" "Oh, and that's the same exact straightener that was left." Or, "Are these your earrings?" I would leave sweaters there when we'd go out at night, for the summertime, that chill breeze. And I remember I would even do my laundry with him. And one time, my folded sweater that he washed for me, he was giving it back to me. And he goes, "Here you go." And I said, "No, leave it there." All of that got left behind. He kept all my things or threw it out or whatever. But the point is, I never saw them again. So those were two examples of gaslighting signs. And he played me like a fiddle. Very professionally done.
So he basically, I'm sorry for putting it this way. He basically, like you said, was a summer fling. He used you for the summer for his own benefit. And at the end of the summer, now what I find interesting is why take you to his family's house in that other state and introduce you to them only to leave you a week later? Is that pretty much how it happened?
Yes, exactly. That's what happened. And I remember his cousin sister saying, "I'm having a birthday party at the house in a couple of weeks. There's going to be a lot of people and a lot of fun. You should bring her." And he said in front of her, "You want to come?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So that's how, real it seemed, how serious it seemed.
Sure.
And
meeting the family. In my past relationship, the one that started this podcast, for the first year, I didn't meet any of her family. And one day I said to her, and the audience knows at the very beginning, she said to me, "We got to keep this relationship a secret." But the more we got involved and the I love yous and we started hanging out, I finally said to her one day, it would be nice if I met. She had 2 or 3 brothers living in our geographical area, and she would often see them. She would go out there on the weekends, or she would see them during the week, and finally, after pursuing or persisting that why don't I meet one of them, she introduced me to one of them, but it wasn't the ones that were living here. One had moved here from Spain. He was living in Spain for most of his life, and he decided to come to the United States and start his life over for some reason. He came and lived at her home, and he was the one that she introduced me to. And then, because I kept saying to her, if I'm not going to meet your family, this is a sign like you're not in this for the long run, And so after she introduced me to her brother, the one that came here, she said, "Are you happy now that you met one of my brothers? Because, you were complaining." But that was the beginning. It's interesting. That was the beginning of the end too, because in her mind, if I introduce you to my family, it's going to appease me, thinking that, well, now one would think logically, you're not going to introduce a boyfriend or girlfriend to your family if you aren't going to stick around, right? Why do that to the family? Why do that to yourself? So the same thing happened to me that happened to you, because my relationship broke up almost a month or 2 after meeting her brother. And it was very odd. So he introduces you to his family, and then a week or 2 later gets called away on a business trip. And that's when he called you and said, he basically moved, or he was going to, the kind of work he did, it could go on for months, right? It was like 6 months. Didn't you find out that he ended up leaving the country as well?
That's what he said. He said he was leaving the country and he didn't know when he would be back. But now I remember he said he was going to Tennessee. Tennessee is where he said he was going to go.
Okay.
And following Instagram and things like that, that part of it was true, but it was for a couple of days. So it was really hard to catch him in a lie. Obviously, he was lying the entire time.
Right.
But the proof, you could do anything to manipulate it, to flip it.
Yeah.
Where you could never catch him,
Oh.
he would never tell you. He could.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't have to explain, but you pretty much get the story, how
Yeah.
many ways this could be twisted.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me. She was such a professional manipulator or gaslighter that the way she presented things, there was almost so convoluted that you couldn't catch her in the lie, or you couldn't prove otherwise because they're so good at it. And thank you for talking about that particular one, because if I may say to the audience, I spoke to Angelica a month ago about coming on, and she didn't want to talk about this relationship because she was feeling still triggered by it. And so thank you, Angelica, for sharing that story. It's exactly what I'm trying to get out there, is that this is going on in the dating world, and it leaves us, the victims, traumatized. Literally, the way they ghost us, the way they just drop us, leading up to getting dropped, is everything's peachy keen. I mean, they make it seem like they're in love with you, and they treat you with respect, and they treat you with love and kindness, and then almost overnight they become a completely different person. And that sounds like what happened with you and let's just call him Tom for any purposes. Talk about, if you'd like, and by the way, there was no contact after that, right? You and him never spoke
Correct.
again? Okay.
I actually blocked the number.
All right. So very similar to mine, parallel to mine. I haven't spoken to my ex. Then not too, I don't remember the time frame, but not too long after, or shortly after, you did meet another gentleman who lived in another state. Let's call him Christopher. But you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, and actually, that person I met prior to.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yes. That person I met prior to the other individual. So that was going on repeatedly for a long time, and to the point where it went absolutely nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. We just spoke through phone, and I swear it was a very easy way to detect gaslighting, because he talked about his future, and he talked about marriage and his kids and what he wanted his wedding to look like, and say things to me like, "You're going to come to my wedding." But when I would ask to let's meet up, you do it first.
Yeah.
And it just went tit for tat, and I addressed that. I said, this is not a competition. As a gentleman, you come first, and then I come. No, you come first. And you're inviting me to your house. And my response was, I don't jump from house to house.
Yeah.
You want to meet up? Let's meet up.
Let's fill in a few gaps for the audience. You were, so after I think we called him Tom. After Tom disappeared and ghosted you, you reconnected with whatever his name I called him, the other one that lived out of state. And he lived out of state, and he wanted you to come get in your car, and that drive would have been what?
About the same.
Yeah, about an hour and a half. So you would have to go through a major metropolitan city and then go into another state. And he was not willing to come to you. And maybe because I'm old fashioned, but I don't think it's an old fashioned thing that when you are courting a woman and you want to date a woman and get to know her, you make the effort. You get in your car. But he didn't have a car, did he? That's something else. He always
At that
talked to.
time, he did not.
But there is where we live, there is everything from trains and subways and buses, and of course, then there's Uber or there you could have met halfway, but it never seemed to come to fruition, right? He he wanted you to go all the way up to him.
And it's not even that. Too many red flags because if I went up to him, it would have to be worthwhile. Like, let's do something outdoors. Let's hang out. Let's explore a state I've never been to. The his answer was just come to my house.
Mm.
Um, and do what?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know and do what.
Right.
But what would be the point of that? And he needed to realize like I'm not like the other girls that he hangs around with, and I think that's what he misinterpreted. Gaslighting, again, a great example, and what I'm happy about is this time I caught it. The old me would have been like, okay, it's false hope, let's go, and I have to make the effort, and if he likes me or if I'm pretty enough, he'll take the next step with me, and on and on and on. And you would come to realize gaslighting, I would be doing all the work and he'd just be sitting there
Yeah.
talking into
Mm-hmm.
thin air. And I'm really happy that I'm at a point in my life where I'm able to, I don't want to say figure it out, but detect it, the early warning signs.
Good.
um I think, and this manipulation, some people are just really terrible at gaslighting. I think now from experience, you're able to tell. And some people from my other experience with that man over the summer are just really good at gaslighting. And that was in a way that was professionally done. But even with that, looking back at it, I'm a little grateful that I got to see the other side of gaslighting where I got to realize the point of that story is when somebody's so nice and somebody seems so perfect, you have to question it. And he seemed just perfect
Good
and
point.
too nice,
Good point.
you know? And there's no such thing. And it was like, I could tell him jump and he would say, how high? But I realized I was essentially doing things by myself. I would get there, spend Saturday there, spend Sunday there, in the room watching TV,
Waiting
waiting
for
for him to
him.
come home
Mm-hmm.
from work,
Mm-hmm.
which would be at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, and then say he's gonna take a shower and let's go out for the night. And even going out for the night, I felt like it was useless because we just listened to some music and then whatever, some drinks, some soft drinks. But I would be doing my own thing during the day. I'd be driving around, exploring the city, um, having lunch by myself. I went apple picking by myself, which means I paid for all of it by myself. Um,
Interesting.
yeah, so there was really it was just more confusion that he created on my part, knowing willingly what wanted. Um, but that was an extreme form of gaslighting, which he did excellent at.
Oh
But
yeah.
now I know it was too perfect. It was to the T, to the T. But now I know, or so far I know the levels of gaslighting where you could see some are just really blatantly obvious, like the guy on the phone, and others are just well done.
And that's why I asked you to come on, because even though my last relationship was a little longer and a little bit more involved, the nuances of gaslighting are the same. My ex was very good at what she did. Her deceit and her lies and her cheating. Um, did you ever suspect him? I guess if you were with him every weekend, he couldn't have been with another woman. But did you ever suspect that there might be another woman over the summer, or you?
No, nothing. Nothing. And I think part of it was me enjoying it and going with the ride because it's that sense of competition where you want to find out the truth first.
Right.
And in this case, there was nothing to find out. Looking back at it and examining the situation, now I can see, okay, he was always on the phone when he was driving when we weren't together. Um, which meant that on his way coming home from work, he was talking to somebody on the
Yep.
phone
Yep.
and would say, I'm going to bed at night. I'm going to bed when I go home, have a good night, and then come and walk into me at the door and go out with me during the night. How well was that played out? Now looking back at it, now you start to fill in the gaps. Um,
Yeah.
so it goes to show you and it's scary because now the whole trust is gone. Something
Oh,
can seem so perfect and you would never question it. There's no reason to question it. A normal human being would say, who wants to be in a devoted relationship, I'll go to work, I'll come home, we'll spend time, and life goes on. There is no third person.
and Angelica, this is exactly where I'm at, because even though I'm now, I think, approaching 7 months, and I keep telling the audience I'm not counting, but you just can't help but count, because each month that goes on, 7 months after this breakup, I'm trying to move on, and we're going to segue in a few minutes into the dating apps, because I know you're back on the dating apps. I don't trust anybody. I am so, I guess, traumatized from what happened, that even if I started dating somebody, I'm not, my trust issues are off the chart. And it sounds like yours might be too. So, excuse me. So let's talk about, so these two gentlemen are somewhat in your past, except for the one on the phone. I think you see, you were still talking to him this year, correct? There were some phone calls.
Yes. But again, it was the same situation. You just pick up where you left off.
Right.
So that's not even anything.
So
There was no change in that.
you put an end to that. Okay. So I know over the past, early this year or part of this year, you were on some dating apps and you did go out on some dates. Are there any that you stick out in your mind that you want to share with us? Any horror stories, or did you find anybody pleasant? I remember you telling.
No, I didn't find anybody. But what's interesting, I went on a handful of dates, and men seem to around my age seem to think it's um a girl only wants them, or it's appropriate for them to brag about how much money they have. And that was what I saw on some of the dates I went to. There were two guys who would nonstop talk about what their parents did, what they did for a living, and how much money they had, and worked for a law firm, I guess in a way to woo the woman. And I found that just obnoxious, because there's more to talk about on a first date than that, or a second date at that. And I did. This gentleman, I met him on a second date, thinking there would be more to talk to, and why not give it a chance to develop. But I think with the dating apps, men don't seem to understand. I can only speak on my experience that I went out with a guy from a dating app, and he would he insisted we went to a really nice high-end restaurant, and after he insisted that I come to his apartment. It was the first date. We went out to eat. I said, no, thank you. And he seemed very shocked that I said no, as if the expectation was, now I bought you dinner. Now you need to come to my apartment. And I said, no, no, thank you. And there were no signs of that. Had I known, I wouldn't have gone. And he continued to like me after that on the dating app. He continued to reach out to me. I had to block him on the dating app. So, I mean, it goes to show there's so many extremes.
I'm not even close to having a woman back to my apartment. It's not even on my radar at this point. If I was to meet a woman, I would absolutely not bring her back. And even having sex with her, I'm traumatized still from the last relationship. And that's a problem, because the summer's coming. I'm not looking for sex, unlike some of the guys that you're meeting. And listen, I don't think it's a problem if a guy's looking to find a woman, take her out to dinner and have sex with. There are apps for that. Okay, I talked about this in the last episode. That's what Tinder is for, right? And there are other apps that are specifically designed for hookups. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
The I think the dating apps that you're on, there's one. I think you're on one that's the same one that I'm on. I don't know if you're still on it. That's a more reputable dating app, and it's not. That's not the protocol. You don't go out on a date and expect sex the first night. It's just not that. It's not that dating app's reputation. Is what I'm trying to say. Tinder's reputation is a hookup. At least it used to be. I don't. I haven't been on it in I don't know, a long time. Um, any other stories of? I think you told me a story about one guy that either didn't look like his picture or he was very unruly while he was on the date with you. He didn't. There was some story you told me about some guy that you met.
Well, there was a guy the one that bragged about how much money he had and then reached out for a kiss at the end of it, grabbed me and reached out for a kiss, and I felt so disgusted.
Yeah,
That's
inappropriate. Yeah.
obviously that's when signs are there. That's not what you want. That's not what you do. But the pleasant part about that was I text him afterwards, moving forward, saying, I don't think this is gonna work, very cordially. And very cordially he accepted it and said, okay, no problem. It was nice meeting you, and if you ever want to chat, we can still chat. Never heard from him again, but that was, a nice way, I guess, to end it. But the fact that you grabbed me to kiss me was just
Yeah.
um
You don't
and
do
one
that.
more gentleman I met. First date was great. We went out. Um we spoke. It was fine. I remember it was a really rainy night and I had to drive. It was further from where I live, much further, about 45 minutes, but I did it. Seemed very nice on the profile on the phone. And we went out for a second time. And for the second time, actually, it was my invite. And I
Mm.
remember calling him out to see me. And we went out to a place that grills food. And I remember sitting there till like 10, 11 o'clock. We ate, we chat, nothing, no red flags. And when the bill comes, which was about $20, neither of us said a word.
Oh, that's the one I'm
Um,
talking about. Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I knew something very strange happened on one of your dates. Yeah, continue.
ne-
Continue.
Neither of us said a word. And we sat there quietly for 45 minutes as if we were students in a classroom. And I would keep my phone under the table, pretend to go on it, and he would do the same thing. And I couldn't understand. We sat there till closing. This bill is on the table, and I wasn't gonna get it. As a gentleman, I of course it's $20. I'm short for money, but I would have paid the $20. Um, as a gentleman, I assumed, I guess, you would pay the bill. But it looked like perhaps because I invited him to come over to my side of town and it
Oh,
was my idea
he expected
and
you
we
to
were
pay.
expected me to pay, but that we were just like it was friends. He ended up paying and I never heard from him ever again.
Wow. No,
Um
that's just so wrong. If I was invited by a woman to out for dinner or to come to her, like you said, her neck of the woods or whatever, and the bill came, I'm still going to reach for it. And if she wants to put her hand out and say, no, 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 I got this, or say, hey, let me at least split it with you. You know, uh, I guess at that point I would decide whether or not that, I might say, okay, we'll split it. Um, but I'm from the old school. The gentleman pays. So regardless of who invites who, and it's come on, for $20, the guy couldn't pick up the check and pay for $20.
yeah.
Oh God.
So needless to say, I've taken a hiatus from the dating apps and
Oh, you
I'm
have? Okay.
actually I have and I was thinking of going back on it, but I'm nervous now because again, this time of year is when I met that other person and I don't want a summer fling again.
Mm.
I need to find a different focus. So I'm thinking about when might be a good time to jump on these dating apps. I haven't figured it out, but right now is not the time for me. Right now, I think I'm just gonna browse and spend some time on me.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what I'm trying to do. But find it interestingly, I'm in a very similar boat as you are, as the summertime is triggering for me. For my ex, the summer was the highlight of our year. We both loved the beach. And as you know, I live like 6 blocks from the beach. So every weekend she was down here, Saturday and Sunday, weather permitting. And we were on that beach for hours. We get there at 10 in the morning. We stayed till 5 in the afternoon, and we would have lunch there and sometimes dinner there. And 3 summers in a row we spent at the beach. So I'm looking at it from a different perspective than you are this time. I'm looking at it like, oh my God, the summer's coming. I'm a beach person and I have nobody to go to the beach with. And yeah, I've said this before. Yes, I could take my bike, go down the boardwalk, I can go down the sand, dig myself a hole, and sit there and read a book and hope that a lovely woman walks up to me. You know, but to me, it's the opposite. I'd like to find someone for the summer to go hang out. The beach where I live, and you know it a little bit, is filled with restaurants and ice cream parlors and attractions. There's a carnival there every week. There's food trucks. And of course, it's just the scenery, the sunset and the walk on the boardwalk. It's just a really, really romantic place to be, especially in the summertime on a nice summer night. And I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that with the person that I recently left. And I see where you're coming from, though. It could be triggering for you because 2 summers ago, this is how you got ghosted. And did he break your heart? I mean, do you think you were falling for him?
Yes, and we said I love you to each other.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
But everything was I'm doing it first. Um
Mm.
I don't know. These things happen, but it was the most hurtful thing, and he even said he would come over to my parents' house. So to the point of manipulation where you're willing to blend families and introducing you to your family member
Mm-hmm.
and willing to come over to the opposite side. It's like, where do you draw the line? Where are their boundaries? Where is it enough to say, okay, this is gaslighting? There isn't any line that's drawn to say people are willing to do anything, almost everything, to get what they want,
Mm-hmm.
even if it includes meeting your family, introducing you to family. Doesn't mean anything.
And this is again exactly why I started this podcast, because my relationship was filled with gaslighting and deceit and lies, and I didn't see the signs. Or if I did, and I've talked about this, I ignored them or chose to ignore them. So the podcast is called Life and the Choices We Make. I chose to ignore the big lifeguard red flags. And in the end, somebody once said to me, or I heard on a podcast, that the reasons, oh gosh, I wish I could remember how she said it. The reasons for the red flags that you see in the beginning are the reasons why you leave in the end, or something like that. And it's so true. It's so true. If we could just identify, when I say we, I mean people like you and I, who are nice people who are looking for a good relationship with just a nice person, could identify these red flags early on and know to walk away, which I think you have just said that you're getting good at recognizing them and um, walking away. I didn't do that, and I stayed way, way, way too long until I got, she knows my story very well. So, this is why I wanted to dive into the world of gaslighting is to understand it better, and help people identify what it is, how what the signs are, what to do when you're presented with gaslighting. So, Angelica, is there anything you would like to add that maybe you forgot, or you would like any advice that you have or tips for the audience?
I mean, it's never, you can never say it'll never happen again. You don't know who's going to come up and cross your path and who the universe introduces you to. Um, but I mean, it's a lesson learned, and these are part of life. These are lessons part of life, and as hurtful and the betrayal, is there that will always stay with you with people that who you least expect and who you love. I mean, I don't know what else to say. It's going to happen. It's unfortunate, but we come across those people, and they, whether we like it or not, it happens.
It's what we do with the signs in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's knowing when to say no, or step back, or walk away, and not. I think sometimes, and I'll speak for myself. Sometimes I'm so I hate to use the word desperate. I'm so desperate to be with somebody or not alone that I'll take whatever comes along. And I don't mean that literally, like just anybody, but especially if the person is beautiful or charismatic, like my ex was. Um, but I've learned today to say, take a step back and analyze the situation, and be more cautious. Um, I do have a story, but I'm not going to tell it now, of somebody that I met on a dating app. I think I told you about it, but I'm already rethinking twice whether to meet her or not, because there's two red flags flying quite high. So, um, okay, Angelica, I want to thank you for coming on. I know I've been pestering you for a couple of weeks, but you finally came up. Um, and thank you for sharing that story. That was very important. I
Thank
think,
you.
yeah, I think everybody needed to hear that story. So, all right, maybe we'll have you back if you find something. If you have success in your dating over the summer, or if something happens and you want to share it, we'll have you back. You can give the audience an update.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you.